You know the "our brains are shrinking" meme? Well, apparently it's true. Are you ready for it this time? This is a wild one we got today.
I teach 8th grade history, and I have 110-ish students. 2 of them are reading on grade level right now. 18 of them are at a kindergarten level. 55 of those students are between a 2nd and 4th grade level.
So this 8th grade teacher made a TikTok video talking about the fact that she has 100 students and only 2 of them read at their grade level. 2 of them read at their actual grade level, 15 of them at kindergarten level, and 55 or more are like behind. What is happening? ChatGPT AI slop is ruining us. And this is happening to everyone. Our attention spans are shorter. These kids don't know how to read. It gets worse. Let's keep watching.
That's a lot of them. And that's typical of what I've seen lately from students. But it's not just literacy. It's not just literacy, and it's not just like lack of content knowledge. It's not just critical thinking skills. It's basic thinking skills. My students can decode almost nothing. They cannot apply inference. They cannot process questions that are longer than a sentence. They cannot connect cause and effect. They can't track multi-step ideas like in a political cartoon.
So these kids have no critical thinking skills. And that's what she's trying to get to. And of course, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Not everything is doom and gloom. We're going to get to the good too. But this is pretty bad. Like, this is pretty dooming. And I actually have a friend in real life who is a middle school teacher. And he tells me the same exact thing this lady is telling me. That's how I know it's true. Because I haven't just heard it one time or from a lady I don't know. I've heard it from a credible source. And he's not like an old man, like a boomer saying, oh, these kids suck. Like, he's my age. And what they're basically saying is that these kids are like an NPC in a video game where you tell them short task, answer, what to do, then go and do it. But they have like they can't decode a complex message. Forget about philosophy. That's way beyond. I mean, they just do the basic tasks, which is funny, but it's very sad. I mean, and I again, this is obviously because of the new era that we're living in. And there's also another video I want to talk about that kind of breaks this down. But at the same time, there are some pros that come with it, but there's a lot of cons that we're getting into.
4 kids, actually. This happened in every class. We were doing guided notes. Supposed to be a real easy day. It was review. They wrote down, Maryland was founded as a safe haven for Catholics. It was on the board. They wrote it down. And before we moved on, I call on a student and I ask, hey, where were the Catholics one more time? And these students, what they do is they look at me, and then they look at their notes, and then they look at the board. They look back at their notes. And some of them never answered me. They never figured out the answer.
So this teacher was teaching them that Maryland, the state, was founded as a safe haven for Catholics that used to be prosecuted back in the day. And she wrote it on the board. And then when she asks a random student, where were the Catholics at? Answer, crazy thing over here. I mean, my brain is just too advanced maybe for you, but the answer is Maryland. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. It was on the board and the kids can't figure it out. Not all, like she said, some can, but that one specifically, and she said a lot of them cannot. Now, I know a lot of you are going to jump to, this is the teacher's fault. The teachers suck. And the teachers nowadays are not like the teachers back in the day. And maybe you're right. But a lot of this is happening at home. If the kids are going to school and they don't know what is going on, even before they get to school, before they get to kindergarten, they're in their home with their parents and they're not learning what they got to learn. They're going to school and they're not being prepared. And if your kid is behind, it's kind of your job as a parent to teach them, to get them up to speed with the rest of the students. Doesn't mean that the kids are stupid. No, something is missing here. It can't be that everyone all of a sudden needs to be in special ed. That's obviously not the case. It's because something in this process is failing and these kids are not learning. Now, she's about to explain more about it.
It was wild. And I kept giving them hints, like rephrasing the question and saying, like, it's in your notes. We just wrote it down. Where are the Catholics? It's on the board. And they never got it.
She's telling them that it was on the board and they still don't get it. What is happening?
I have these extra credit assignments, 3 of them. They're on the wall. They could turn it in at any time. And I think they're pretty easy. Like this one, and it replaces your lowest daily grade. So like end of the quarter, lots of these start to roll in. This one says, on a separate sheet of paper, choose 4 principles of the Constitution, and for each one, write what it means in your own words, an example of how it works in the U.S. government today, and a personal example, how that principle might show up in your own life, school, or community. I wrote them an example, and I labeled it, do not use the example, and I even gave them a checklist at the bottom. Make sure you have these 4 things so you can get full credit before you turn it in. Make sure you have the 4 principles and the meaning and the examples. Make sure it's 1 full page. First of all, they don't write it on a separate sheet of paper. I've only had 1 kid this year do that. They just write like in the spaces of the instruction, like in the margins and stuff. Very bizarre.
So she's giving these kids a task with a literal like checklist of do this, do that, do that. Don't do what I explained. I'm just giving you, showing you how to do it. And if it's not multiple choice, they don't get it. And they don't have the thought of grabbing an extra sheet of paper and writing it. And you might say, well, the teacher maybe should have told them. I mean, yes, maybe, but that's kind of common sense. I mean, I don't think that this is a bad teacher off of what I'm seeing. I don't know this lady, but in general, she seems like a calm and collected, probably history teacher or something like that just is just doing her job. And what she's asking them to do is actually pretty simple. How are they not figuring it out? But she's about to give us an example, and I know it's going to get worse.
But like, they just don't do the assignment. It's like they don't understand because it's not written in like a multiple choice format. This is exactly what this student wrote. They wrote the principle's definition in the student's own words. They rewrote the instructions. The whole thing. Even the example where it says, do not use this example, they just copied the instructions and wrote them again.
They rewrote it? What is happening? What is happening? They literally rewrote exactly what she wrote on the sheet of paper. I promise you, I had seen some of this video, but I hadn't gotten this far into it. It just keeps getting better. I was not expecting this. This is unbelievable.
And then checked off the checklist, even though like you didn't do it.
And they checked off the checklist. Bro, what is happening? What is happening to these kids? This is like out of an episode of like SpongeBob. This is something that like SpongeBob and Patrick would do in school. Literally.
I don't think they're fooling with me. This is a student who's doing extra credit on their time off. They genuinely want to bring their grade up. I know them. But like, is that what you think that the extra credit assignment was? You sat there and thought like, yeah, she wants me to copy down the directions and then turn it in.
So somehow I didn't pick up that this was extra credit. So this is even worse, because if it's a regular assignment and you're like a kid that just doesn't care about school, which there's a lot of that, then it makes sense that the teacher just gave you an assignment. You don't want to do it. You don't care about school. You just write whatever and hand it back to her. But this is extra credit. So either there's 2 options here. Either this person actually didn't understand anything, or they just didn't listen to her that it was extra credit, and it's one of those students that don't care about it and just did it anyways and gave it to her. Both of them, they're cooked, because those kids are going to be your doctor one day. They're going to be your president one day. And like I said, I'm not trying to be a boomer and just dunk on children. I'm Gen Z. I'm the older Gen Z, but I'm Gen Z. I'm not trying to dunk on my own generation or Gen Alpha or whatever. There's pros to each generation. And if you look back in history, every generation has tried to say the same thing about the next one, that they're lazy, that they're dumb, and so far we're still alive. We're still okay. Yeah, you can say the world is better or worse depending on how you see it. But in general, we're still doing fine. But this stuff, it's not great.
But no, they didn't think that because they didn't think anything. These kids have a frightening ability for information to go from their eyes to their hands and not pass through the brain at all. What do we do, y'all? That ship is sailing across the ocean and there is no one at the wheel.
This is hilarious. She pretty much called them stupid without saying it. She went the long PR way of saying their information goes from their eyes to their hands without passing through their brain. She's calling them brain dead. So then she poses the final question of, is it just me? And then you read the comments and like pretty much a bunch of people are agreeing with her. Parents and teachers, they're like, no, these kids are pretty dumb. They're cooked. Now, it all depends on how you define dumb, and let's talk about the good and the bad. This video is already getting pretty lengthy, so I'll talk about the other video I was talking about in another video. But let me give you my opinion. Okay, these kids, it's pretty simple. They are on their phone a lot. Even if the parents don't allow them, that means that their attention spans will be shortened. I've experienced this myself. Of course, I don't have that short of an attention span, but in recent years, I've noticed how my attention span tends to shorten if I spend a lot of time looking at Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, whatever you look at. So I try to change those patterns and force myself to watch long form content, movies, podcasts, whatever, and actually get my attention span back up, read a book, stuff like that. What's happening, I think, in my true honest opinion, is that parents are not paying attention to this. And it's not just to blame the parents or the teacher. It's a longer story. There's a major affordability problem in America. Anyone can see this. It doesn't matter who's president. This is not a political statement. We saw this with the previous president. We see this with the current president. It's just basically that salaries are not keeping up with the cost of living. And therefore, parents are having to work more and more, pick up an extra job. And therefore, you have parents who are less present in their children's lives. So even the good parents who wait a long time to have kids, then prices keep rising more than they expected, and they just don't have the funds to fund all of these activities and schools and stuff and healthcare for these kids that they had. Therefore, they have to pick up more jobs, work extra, and they're less present in their kids' lives. And therefore, those kids don't really have that guidance. And then when they go to school, the teachers try their best, but they're not there all day long. And the teachers are not the parents. At the end of the day, a teacher is there not to parent your kids, but to just teach them a certain course. And they'll try their best to teach them and help them learn. But at the end of the day, if they don't learn, they don't learn. Like, that's just how it is. Some people are going to be left behind. The problem is that most of these kids are being left behind nowadays. And it's a whole problem all across. So let me know your thoughts down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you're new around here, you can click right here to subscribe. And I'll be seeing you in this video that I created just for you right after this one. Until next time, bye.